Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man Podcast. My name is Rory Paquette, and I am, as always, your very grateful host. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm recording this solo episode on the heels of a couple of different things, so I want to get a couple messages out to you guys, and to I don't know. I mean, I guess people who are out there looking to guest on podcasts and looking to start your own podcast. Seems like everybody I'm talking to right now is doing one of those two things. Either you're wanting to start your own podcast or YouTube channel, or you're wanting to get on podcasts and YouTube channels and market your products. So, we're going to talk to all of you folks today. Now, if that isn't you, well, hey, this podcast probably isn't about you, brother. So you can take a back seat and watch the show. Before we get rolling, though, I do have to take a moment to take a sip of my preferred beverage. Man, oh man, good stuff. And if you're a friend of the program, and I know you are, you know we're drinking Freedom Hill Coffee. At Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram, you guys. Check them out. Take a look. They brew a mean bean. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful. Just like my wife. They do all the right things for all the right reasons, and they support veterans, which is why we support them here on this channel. Because we support veterans here to the nth degree. Without them, I don't get to sit here and have an opinion. Look them up at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Tell them Power Man sent you. Gentlemen, a couple quick things. If you are trying to guest on podcasts and YouTube, channels and things like that, there are a million different ways to communicate with people. You can communicate with people through different platforms, through websites, through email, through text, through messenger. I mean, there's no shortage of ways to communicate with somebody. There's nothing that's harder on a podcast host or a YouTube channel host or someone who's trying to put together a show than when the guest just no shows. I mean, no show, no email, no nothing, no. Hey, here we are. Just see ya. I mean, nothing. And that just happened to me. It doesn't happen to me often. I mean, it hardly ever happens actually, but it's happened to me twice in the last couple of days. And so I just want to put this out there. A lot of you guys who listen to this are promoting your products. You written a book, or you got a course, or you got a podcast you're promoting, or you're doing some affiliate marketing, you're promoting that. Guys, you know, as podcasters, we only have so much time in the day. And I know I personally book 90-minute slots. So if somebody no shows on me, I wait for 20 minutes just out of courtesy because anybody can be late. But then I've lost an hour and a half out of my day. I can't ever get back. You know what I mean? And that's hard enough. But the just the act of no showing honestly makes me kind of go, you know what? I really don't need you on my show. With all the listeners we've got and all the people who are paying attention and all of and the line of gentlemen that are lined up to be on this program, if you can't show up at all, I don't need you. I really don't. And my guests don't need you. They don't need that. So, it's kind of hard to do. Um, well, I want to flip the script to the other side too. Um, as a guest, if you're guesting on a podcast, and podcasters, I want you guys to hear this as well. I don't care if you have 5 listeners. I don't care if you have one listener and it's your mom. You have value. Okay. And what I'm seeing more and more and more of is guests, potential guests who are saying, "Oh well, what's your reach? What's your demographic? And how many downloads do you have on these days? Do you have more downloads on this day as opposed to this day? And how many subscribers do you have versus how many views do you have? And what's your average number of downloads in a month?" Gentlemen, first of all, if you really are going to say no to being hosted on a podcast because they don't have a million listeners. You must really be somebody. You really must. And if you are, before you'll even schedule on a podcast or accept an invitation to be on a podcast, your question is, well, how many listeners do you have? That question, whoops, little clankety clank. That question, you know, basically puts out there that that question signifies to the podcaster that, hey, if there's a certain number of listeners I'm listening to, and if you don't have enough listeners, then I may not be on your podcast. Now, to the average listener, that might be like, hey, no big deal. People want to know how many listeners you have. And I'm not sitting here telling you to lie or to not tell people that. I mean, hey, if somebody wants to know, I'm very open and honest about what we have and where we have. We have almost 200 episodes, been downloaded in over 40 countries. So I'm not shy. But I appear on podcasts all the time that have a few listeners here or 30 listeners doing an episode. I appeared on one where it was brand new and they had like 4. Here's the value. Okay. Let's just say to me as the guest. First of all, even if this person only has 5 listeners today, when you do a podcast and you post it and it's on Spotify or it's on iTunes, it's in your menu for as long as you have the podcast. It's in your menu literally forever, or for whatever your forever is. As long as you have that podcast will be posted for anyone to go back and look at. That has value. That's a piece of marketing that is what's called evergreen. It's out there. I don't have to do anything about it. I don't have to repost it. I don't have to redo it. I don't have to call someone and say, hey, could you please? It is always available for anyone to listen to. All right. That's one. Number 2, as someone appearing on a podcast, again, I don't care if they have 5 listeners because that podcaster is interviewing me as an expert in my field. They are giving their time and their platform, and they're preparing an actual podcast to market me. It gives me more credibility for whatever it is I'm trying to promote because I'm being interviewed on a podcast. Now, the average listener who may hear that episode, they don't necessarily know how many downloads this guy or lady have. They don't know if this is a huge podcast or a smaller one. They only know that Rory is on being interviewed by somebody. If Rory's being interviewed by somebody about what he's doing, well, then he must be doing pretty good. It gives you credibility right out of the chute, and it gives you an opportunity to market whatever it is your product is, or your service, or your coaching program, or your book for nothing. At the end of the podcaster is going to send you, the guest, a link to that podcast. So you can take that link and you can market it in all of your social media that you have, in your email lists, everything that you're doing to try and grow and promote your business. You can send that link out, and when people click that link, it's going to go back to that episode, and they're going to be able to hear you being interviewed. So what folks don't understand is that podcasters are doing a huge service for you when they ask you to sit down on their podcast. They're giving you a piece of marketing that you can't get anywhere else. Think about that for a minute. I mean, if somebody comes on the Power Man, it doesn't really matter what the Power Man is or how many listeners we have or anything else. When I hand that link to somebody else and they send it out to their people, I'm giving them credibility right off the bat because I'm interviewing them. Being interviewed on a show gives you that. It helps your sales. You have to pay for marketing like that normally. And as podcasters, we're giving you that piece of marketing for free. All we're asking for is 30 to 45 minutes of your time to sit down and do the interview for you and your business. So when you ask a podcaster, when your response to the question, rather, hey, would you like to be on the podcast? Well, how many listeners do you have? Not only does it not matter in the overall scheme of things, but it's insulting. And I'm talking to all the other podcasters out there right this second, and I hope you're all listening. If somebody asks you that question, I think you should just respond and say, you know what? I'm sorry. I guess we're not a good fit after all. And walk away because they don't have any appreciation for who you are or what you're doing. They don't have any appreciation for the marketing piece that you're getting ready to prepare for them to give to them to assist them with their marketing for free. I'm telling you, nothing in the podcasting business, those are like the two things that just frost my cake more than anything else. And there's a reason I'm telling you guys this too. Okay. It's not just because I want to vent today. All right. A lot of you are thinking of starting podcasts. And I think this is important for you to know. Even more of you are guesting on podcasts. You're putting your name out there saying, hey, I'd love to guest on podcasts because I really want to grow. I want to grow my product. I want to, have an opportunity to sell my book. And you need to understand what it is you're getting. You need to have an idea of what the podcaster is providing for you. And you need to understand that tiny little modicum of marketing. It's important. It really is. The last thing that I'll say on this topic, guys, is that Justin Wegner, who was formerly with Backbone Swag and is now with Day 41 Apparel, hugely successful apparel guy. Friend of mine, strong in his faith. I've had him on numerous times. When I asked him to be on the podcast as my first ever interview, he didn't ask me how many episodes we had. He didn't ask me how many downloads we had. He said, hell yeah, let's do it. And my first interview was born. And he didn't do it to be nice. He did it because he's a marketer. He did it because he understands advertising and sales. And he knew that exponentially that was going to help him. Now, when he came on the show, we weren't averaging 100 downloads per episode back then. And we're well past that now. But we weren't averaging even that back then. I mean, back then we might have been getting 30, maybe 30 to 50. But he didn't ask that question because he knew two things. Number one, he knew I was going to give him a link and he was going to be able to take that link as a younger, newer, apparel company. And he's going to be able to take that link and market it. And he's going to be able to say, hey, check out Power Man Podcast with Rory. I was on there. This was awesome. I got my story out. And he posted it in all of his groups. And hundreds and hundreds of people who were following him clicked on the link and listened to the episode. It was one of the biggest episodes we ever had. Up until that point, especially, I think it was the biggest one when it came out because we hadn't really had any of those huge explosion, maybe one, but it was one of our top episodes because he sent it out to everybody. And I did that marketing for him for free. So he knew that was going to happen. And the second thing that he knew was that he's going to give, an hour, hour and a half of his time. And it was a longer interview. So I think he and I spoke for about an hour and a half. He's going to give that time to me. And I'm going to do this interview and I'm going to post it in my podcast menu. It's still there today. And so that was in the 30s. I think it was episode 36. Here we are today, folks, approaching 200 episodes. We've been downloaded in over 40 countries. We have a hugely successful podcast. People listening all over the world. And all of those people get to go back and listen to that first interview with Justin Wagner forever. He got marketing that you can't buy, and he didn't have to buy it. He got it for free. So I hope that no matter what side you're on, you'll recognize the value of what is going on. If you're a podcaster, I hope you recognize your value inherent in what it is you're doing. Don't let somebody tell you, well, you don't have enough listeners for me, you're not good enough. Tell them to go jump in the nearest lake and say thanks, but no thanks. Fire them and tell them, you know what? Look, I'm performing a service here. If you don't want it, well, then goodbye. And have that pride. And if you're a podcasting guest, get on as many podcasts as you can. Get on mine, get on his, get on hers, get on theirs. Get on every podcast you can possibly get on, because every one of those artists, every one of those podcasters that are out there that are busting their butts trying to get bigger and bigger, they're going to give you a piece of marketing that gives you credibility, that gives you exposure, that's going to last as long as their podcast is out there for free. So, gentlemen, before you buy a single Facebook ad, before you spend $1 on an Instagram ad, before you go out there and you spend any money, hiring a promoter or hiring a coach that's going to help you sell, get on a podcast. Donald Trump did it. Worked pretty well. I hope you guys got a little bit of value out of this. I don't care what you're selling, get on a podcast. And you know what? If you want to be on mine, message me. You don't have to be some special, I'm selling this or I own this company or whatever. If you're just a regular guy and you got a story of overcoming something or you've had to overcome something in your life, you know what? Call me, DM me. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to have you on my podcast. And the only thing I ask in return is that you share it to your people when we're done. Because even though at my point in podcasting, I'm no longer worried about telling somebody how many listeners I have. I'm also never going to ask a guest, well, what's your social media profile like? Are you worth having on? This role is about serving. It's not putting yourself out there. It's about helping the common good in a lot of ways. And it's been very good to me, yes. I'm able to do this for a living now after so many years. And I've developed relationships, with people like Justin and other people that I've had on, lots of people I've had on, that have turned into great friendships. I'm grateful for every minute that I've been doing this. So take all those things into consideration, no matter where you fit in the spectrum. And understand that respect given is also respect earned. And let's all help each other out and give each other a hand. Gentlemen, I give you these messages because, number one, I hope they'll help you. And number two, because you're worth it. And you just got to believe it. Till next time.